Welcome back, everyone, to the Malaysia Money Matters show. It's the 23rd of April, 2025.
Good to be back.
Today, we're doing our deep dive into the latest financial news, covering Malaysia and the bigger global picture.
Yep, we've got quite a stack. We'll unpack what really matters, company updates here, international shifts, some political stuff making waves.
Exactly. The mission today is essential insights, maybe some surprising bits without the overwhelm. Let's jump right in.
Okay, where do we start? Malaysian companies.
Let's do it. First up, Alpha IVF Group. Their third quarter net profit, it dropped a bit year on year.
Yeah, down 12.4% to RM 11.91 million. Seems mostly tied to expansion costs, right?
That's what it looks like, expansion and also lower contributions from Singapore. Revenue was almost flat, down just 0.3%.
But those administrative expenses, they really surged. Saw that figure, 76.4%.
Wow. But looking at the bigger picture, the 9-month period, their net profit is actually up 6.3%.
Right, and revenue up 5% over that same 9 months. So it suggests these Q3 costs are, investments.
Investments in that future growth, they're planning quite a bit.
Definitely. 2 more IVF centers here in Malaysia, 2 elsewhere in Southeast Asia, and those 4 satellite clinics in Indonesia. All within the next year, apparently.
Ambitious. They did pay a dividend back in December, 0.5 cent per share.
They did. And the share price reaction to this news was pretty muted, down just 1.72%.
Suggests the market maybe expected these costs, looking at the long game perhaps.
Could be. Investors likely see the expansion potential. We'll have to watch how those new centers perform.
Okay. Next, Bank Negara Malaysia's international reserves, the latest figure.
As of April 15th, US $118.4 billion. Still looking pretty healthy.
Healthy enough to cover imports for how long?
Almost 5 months. 4.9 months of goods and services imports specifically. And it's nearly covers our total short-term external debt.
So a comfortable buffer for the economy then.
Yeah, it signals resilience. Most of it's in foreign currency, but there's IMF reserves, SDRs, gold, other assets too. A good mix.
Good to know. Right, moving to Petronas Chemicals Group, or PCG. Big news from Pengerang.
Yes, the Pengerang petrochemical complex, that huge joint venture with Saudi Aramco, it started commercial operations back in November.
And there's more happening there, isn't there?
Uh-huh. The isogenol plant at the same site, it's hit on spec production. They expect full capacity this year.
That adds quite a bit of production, right? What's isogenol used for again?
About 250 kilotons per annum. It's a specialty chemical, goes into things like car parts, building materials.
And PCG's got other projects coming online, too.
They do. The melamine plant up in Gurun, Kedah, is nearly done. That'll make them the only producer in Southeast Asia.
Interesting position to be in.
Plus, a joint venture in Kertih, Terengganu, making specialty ethoxylates and polyether polyols that's operational now.
And doubled production somewhere else.
Yeah, 2-EH acid production in Gebeng, Pahang. All these expansions together add about 1.8 million tons a year to their total output.
Significant boost.
Yeah.
And their financials, they had a loss previously, didn't they?
They did have a quarterly loss, but they finished FY 2024 profitable overall. And the share price is back up around RM 3.08. Market seems optimistic.
Okay. Let's talk MGB. They're trying to revive that stalled project in Cameron Highlands.
Yeah, the Service Department project, been stuck for 6 years. They're proposing a settlement with their JV partner.
How much is the settlement?
About RM 7.23 million. It covers remaining land costs and interest due to the delay. ASEAN AZG is the partner.
And how are they planning to pay?
It's a mix. About RM 1.6 million in property units from the project itself, and the rest, RM 5.5 million in cash.
So if this goes through, they can finally move forward.
That's the plan. Get approvals, maybe launch in Q3. They estimate about 4 years to complete it. The original GDV back in 2019 was RM 107 million.
Worth reviving then if they can pull it off. Their share price is holding steady at 61 cents.
Yep, no major movement there yet.
Now, something in the cargo space. Escargo, Qatar Airways Cargo, and IAG Cargo.
Right, they're planning a global cargo joint business. The idea is to pool resources.
To achieve what exactly?
Better service, speed, more routes, better connections, efficiency, safety. Basically a stronger global network.
Makes sense. Strength in numbers. Is it a done deal?
Not yet. Still needs regulatory approvals, but if it happens, it connects Mascargo's 100-plus destinations with Qatar's huge reach and IAG's global footprint. Could be quite powerful.
Interesting development for logistics. Okay, Reach 10 Holdings had their IPO recently. How did that go?
Pretty well, it seems. The public portion was 1.85 times oversubscribed.
Decent demand, then.
Yeah, they got over 2,700 applications for about 142 million shares against the 50 million offered. Shares for eligible persons, private placements all fully taken up too.
And the IPO price, what are they raising?
52 cents per share, raising RM 156 million in total.
What's the plan for the funds?
Mostly network expansion fiber optics, building telecom towers, especially in Sarawak, also boosting satellite comms, working capital, and paying down some debt.
Makes sense, focusing on connectivity. They already have a big fiber network in Kuching and Samarian, right?
They do. Listing is set for May 2nd.
Okay, watch that space. Now, Pengerang Corp has a new substantial shareholder.
Yes, Norges Bank. That's the manager for Norway's massive government pension fund. They've taken a 5.26% stake.
Wow, that's significant. When did they buy in?
Looks like April 17th and 18th. They bought enough shares to cross that 5% threshold, hitting about 35.8 million shares total.
Any idea of the value?
Based on the share prices around those dates, the recent purchases are probably worth around RM 4.4 million or so.
Interesting move by a major global fund. Who's Pengerang's biggest shareholder usually?
Still the co-founder, Chua Chunbin, with nearly 20%.
Right. Though Pengerang's recent results weren't amazing, were they?
No, their Q4 2024 net profit was down quite a bit, over 31%, mainly weaker demand in their automated test equipment segment. Share price closed lower too at RM 2.11.
So, a vote of confidence from Norges Bank despite recent headwinds.
Seems like it. Long-term perspective, perhaps.
Speaking of outlooks, NRA Amertron got an upgrade from Hong Leong Investment Bank.
Yeah, upgraded to buy. Which is interesting, as you said, because there's still that uncertainty around U.S. tariffs, and the stock's taken quite a hit this year.
How big a hit?
Down about 44% since the start of 2025. HLIB seems to think that price drop has largely factored in the potential tariff impacts.
Even though NRA isn't directly targeted.
Right. The risk is indirect, like tariffs hitting consumer demand, which then affects orders for Inari's components. But HLAB and actually now 12 research houses in total see upside.
What's the consensus target price?
Around RM 2.49 based on those 12 buy ratings.
Okay, let's quickly cover Scanwolf Corporation. They've landed a subcontract.
Yep, for relocating water supply pipes in Rawang. It's tied to a road upgrading project there, worth about RM 16.6 million.
When's the work due?
Started Tuesday, running through to July 31st. Should give their earnings a nice little boost for this period.
Adds to their order book. How's that looking overall?
Pretty decent, actually. Year to date, they've secured over RM 93 million in construction projects. Though, like Pentamaster, their recent quarterly results showed a loss, even with higher revenue. Share price dipped slightly.
Now, a big investment announcement. Zhejiang Ginseng Paper.
Yes, the Shenzhen-listed global paper manufacturer. They're putting another RM 1.9 billion into their Malaysian operations in Banting, Selangor.
Another 1.9 billion. Wow. This is phase 2.
Exactly. Phase 2 of their expansion here. This adds another 600,000 tons of annual capacity for kraftliner paper.
That's huge. What else does investment cover?
Advanced manufacturing lines, integrated facilities. It's a major upgrade. Plus, it's expected to create 500 new jobs and generate over RM 45 million a year in local spending.
Significant impact. And their total investment here.
This brings our total Malaysian investment up to RM 3 billion.
And where's all this paper going?
About 70% of the new production is aimed at international markets, so a big boost for Malaysia's exports, too.
Definitely a vote of confidence in Malaysia as a manufacturing hub.
Yeah.
Okay, Parkway Life REIT is selling its Malaysian asset.
Yes, their subsidiary is selling strata units and lots at the MO specialist clinics in KL. The price is just over RM 20 million.
Was that their only asset here?
It was freehold property, about 2,400 square meters. The gain on disposal is expected to be pretty small, around $100,000.
So more of a strategic exit from Malaysia for them, perhaps?
Looks that way, maybe reallocating capital elsewhere.
Right. Let's touch on a couple of government-related items. Kita's paddy production allocation.
Yes, the Prime Minister reaffirmed the government's RM 1 billion allocation to boost paddy production in Kita.
This is part of that bigger national push.
Exactly. Part of the RM 5.376 billion plan to increase national rice productivity. This specific funding supports the 5-season planting project in the Mata area over 2 years.
And this came after the Kita MB asked for something specific.
Yes, he'd requested an annual RM 200 million special incentive. This RM 1 billion is the federal government's response to support productivity.
Okay. And the Transport Ministry is looking at port tariffs.
They are, studying a more structured, transparent mechanism for port charges, possibly including annual reviews linked to the CPI.
Why to review now?
To ensure port sustainability, basically. Balancing market needs with the investment needed for capacity development.
And what about that proposed 30% tariff increase that the manufacturers were concerned about?
The transport minister clarified that the Port Klang Authority and Johor Port Authority haven't actually submitted the final documents for approval yet.
Ah, okay. And the 30% wouldn't be all at once anyway.
No, the proposal was to phase it over 3 years, 15%, then 10%, then 5%, and the last review is apparently a decade ago.
Right, context is important there. What about palm oil? Any market updates?
The Malaysian Palm Oil Council expects demand from China and India to pick up in the next couple of months.
Why now?
Restocking ahead of summer, mainly. And palm oil currently has a price advantage over soybean oil. They see prices staying supported around RM 3,900 per ton.
But no major price rally expected.
Not really. Trade tensions, softer crude oil prices are kind of capping the upside. And Malaysian stockpiles might rise a bit due to slower production growth in Sabah.
Overall projection for the year.
Actually expected to fall slightly this year.
Okay. Finally, on the local scene, any stock showing particular momentum?
At Tuesday's noon break, Bursa Malaysia flagged Pakon Holdings with positive momentum, Magma Group with negative. Laform was unchanged. Peter Labs Holdings showed positive momentum.
Just flags based on volume and price changes, right?
Yeah.
Not recommendations.
Exactly. Just unusual activity.
All right, let's shift focus to the international stage now. What's happening with copper?
Copper hit a 2-week high when the London Metal Exchange reopened after Easter. Base metals got a lift generally.
Why was that?
Partly a weaker U.S. dollar makes commodities cheaper for buyers using other currencies. A Bloomberg dollar gauge actually hit a 15-month low.
So copper gained.
About 1.3%, up to U.S. $9,305 a ton. But metals have been choppy this month, with all the talk around U.S. President Trump's import tariffs.
Yeah, that volatility seems to be everywhere. European stocks.
Mixed performance there, followed a sell-off in U.S. assets. That was triggered by President Trump criticizing Fed Chair Jerome Powell.
Ah, that story. So how did the main European indexes react?
The StoXX 600 and Germany's DAX dipped a little. The UK's FTSE 100 actually edged up slightly. Asian markets were generally more stable.
But investor confidence is shaky?
Definitely. Trade war fears haven't gone away, and now this confrontation between Trump and Powell adds another layer of uncertainty.
We saw the dollar index weaken. Did it stabilize?
It steadied a bit after hitting that multi-year low, but the nervousness is still there.
And gold, that really reacted, didn't it?
Absolutely. Gold prices shot up, briefly breaking past U.S. $3,500 an ounce, a new all-time high.
Wow. Purely down to Trump's comments about Powell.
That was the main trigger. Increased demand for gold as a safe haven asset when investors get uneasy like this. Spot gold settled back a bit, but was still up strongly, around $3,452.
So, political uncertainty, monetary policy concerns. Gold stays strong.
Analysts think so. Plus, the weaker dollar makes gold cheaper for international buyers, adding another support factor. It's telling that gold rose even when U.S. stocks fell hard.
Yeah, strong safe haven demand indeed. What about oil prices?
They steadied after taking a hit on Monday. That risk-off mood following the Trump Fed comments, plus ongoing trade war worries, pushed prices down initially.
Where are they trading now?
WTI futures were near $63 a barrel. Brent closed just above $66. Concerns about demand from the trade war and OPEC plus increasing production have weighed on oil recently.
And currencies. Sterling versus the dollar.
Sterling hit a fresh 7-month high against the U.S. dollar, again, driven mainly by that dollar weakness following the attacks on Powell and concerns about Fed independence.
Did it gain against the euro, too?
No, it actually dropped a bit against the euro, but stayed above recent lows. Some analysts think the UK economy might be less exposed to the U.S. tariff shock, which could be helping the pound relative to the dollar.
So the big theme is U.S. dollar weakness. Hit its lowest since when?
Since March 2022, based on the dollar index, driven by those worries over the Fed's independence after Trump's comments.
And this weakness boosts other currencies and commodities.
Exactly. But some analysts are warning this is starting to challenge the dollar's status as the ultimate safe haven. That's a pretty significant potential shift.
Huge implications if that happens. Now, about those U.S. tariffs and inflation, can companies absorb the costs?
Well, corporate America generally has near-record profit margins right now, so theoretically there's some capacity to absorb higher tariff costs.
Well, will they?
That's the million-dollar question, isn't it? How much they pass on to consumers will really determine the inflation impact in 2025. Estimates are all over the place.
So, big uncertainty for Fed policy, too.
Absolutely. Some companies say they'll have to raise prices significantly. Others are trying hard not to, despite rising costs. It's a tough spot.
And there are new U.S. tariffs specifically on solar imports.
Yes, anti-dumping duties on solar cells coming from Malaysia, Cambodia, Thailand, and Vietnam.
How does Malaysia fare?
Our general rate is the lowest at 8.59%. But, and this is crucial, some specific Malaysian companies got hit with much higher duties, one as high as 81.24%.
Why the duties? What did the U.S. find?
The U.S. Department of Commerce concluded that companies in these countries were getting subsidies from China, basically circumventing previous tariffs on Chinese goods. Followed complaints from U.S. manufacturers.
What's the potential impact here in Malaysia? We export a lot of solar products to the U.S.
We do, about U.S. $1.9 billion worth in 2023. Industry groups think this might lead to more Chinese-owned solar firms leaving Malaysia. For local installers who mostly source from China anyway, the impact might be fairly neutral.
Okay. And circling back to President Trump's attacks on the Fed, the concern is really escalating.
It seems so. His intensified criticism of Powell for not cutting rates is raising serious questions about presidential influence over the central bank's independence.
And the market reaction shows investors are worried.
Definitely. That sell-off in U.S. stocks and the dollar, the rise in Treasury yields, it's all linked. Investors fear any attempt to, say, fire Powell could shatter the Fed's credibility.
What would that lead to?
Potentially huge market volatility, maybe driving long-term interest rates higher, and really undermining the dollar's global role. And legally, it's not even clear if you can fire Powell. Divided opinions there.
A lot of uncertainty. And amidst all this, warnings about a U.S. recession.
Yeah, OCBC flagged that Malaysia should brace for a potential U.S. recession, plus a slowdown in China. They see both dragging on the global economy.
And they adjusted their forecast for Malaysia.
They did. Trimmed their GDP growth forecast for us down to 4.3% this year, with a worst-case scenario of 3.5% if those punitive U.S. tariffs on semiconductors actually happen. Stagflation in the U.S. looks more likely to them.
Others are pessimistic, too.
J.P. Morgan analysts put the probability of a U.S. recession in 2025 at 90% if current policies stay the course. Pretty stark warning.
But OCBC also mentioned a potential positive for ASEAN.
Kind of a silver lining, yeah. They suggest these escalating U.S.-China tensions actually make Asia more attractive as a neutral production and investment hub.
For companies looking for alternatives.
Exactly. Companies wanting to diversify away from relying too heavily on either the U.S. or China might see ASEAN as a stable middle ground. Our economic ties with China remain strong despite the geopolitics.
But there's a risk there, too.
Yes, a slowing Chinese economy could still negatively impact ASEAN's trade and investment, even if we benefit from supply chain shifts. It's complex.
Okay, wow. We've covered a huge amount of ground there, from local companies to these major global shifts. Thinking about everything we've discussed, what stands out as the most significant, maybe the most exciting news today?
That's a tough choice, but I think it has to be the developments around President Trump's escalating attacks on the U.S. Federal Reserve's independence, and especially the market's reaction.
Why that one specifically?
Because the ripples are just so broad and potentially transformative. That sharp drop in the dollar, gold hitting record highs, the flight from U.S. assets, it signals a really profound unease among investors.
Unease about U.S. stability.
Exactly. About the stability of the world's largest economy, the predictability of its monetary policy. If the Fed's independence is perceived to be compromised, or if the dollar's safe haven status seriously erodes.
It changes the global financial landscape.
Potentially, yes. It impacts currency values everywhere, commodity prices, investment flows, borrowing costs. The effects could be huge and long-lasting, and very relevant for Malaysia, too.
Definitely something with massive implications that we absolutely need to keep tracking closely.
Without a doubt. It touches on trade, politics, economics.
Yeah.
It's the nexus of a lot of the uncertainty we're seeing right now.
Well, there you have it. Our deep dive into today's key financial news. We've seen Malaysian firms navigating expansions and market shifts, global markets reacting strongly to U.S. political signals, and those evolving trade dynamics.
A busy day on the financial front.
Absolutely. And as we just discussed, those developments around the U.S. Federal Reserve are certainly top of the watch list. We hope this rundown has given you a clearer picture of what's moving the markets and why it matters for you.
Hopefully useful insights for everyone listening.
For more in-depth analysis and all the latest updates as they happen, please do subscribe to the Malaysia Money Matters podcast. Thanks so much for tuning in today.
Thanks, everyone.
We'll catch you next time for another look at the financial world. Hey there, thanks for tuning in. If you would like a deeper dive into all the investment opportunities from today's news, subscribe to my newsletter at mmoneymatters.substack.com. I will be sharing a deeper analysis of the key investment opportunities from today's news, including what makes these opportunities stand out and how they fit into the broader market trends. By subscribing to the Malaysia Money Matters newsletter, you will also get exclusive insights on my watch list and portfolio and fundamental reports on Malaysian listed companies.